Hi everyone, Peter here from Better Planet Education. Have you ever wondered how we can use the sun's amazing power? Well, today we're going to find out all about solar energy, and we've got two brilliant brains to help us. Dave and Ali, solar experts from Luminous Energy. Dave, first of all, what's your role within Luminous Energy?
So I am one of the founders of Luminous Energy. We created the company to try and decarbonize the UK's electricity supply. We set the company up in 2013, and I am now in charge of the general running of the business across the markets that it's in, which is the UK, Australia, the US, and Germany.
Wow, okay. And Ali, what's your role within the business?
I work as a technical manager with Luminous. So basically, I'm responsible for all the solar farms and all the renewable projects that we build. And I look after the day-to-day of the construction and commissioning of those projects.
I know that just recently you've commissioned a new solar farm in Bracon Ash, it's called. Could you tell me, first of all, how much space that solar farm is taking up?
Good question. It is quite a big solar farm. So if you compare it with football pitches, it takes around 48 football pitches to fit
Wow,
in, which is roughly 78 acres of solar of the farmland that we will be using.
goodness me. And how many solar panels will there be on the site, or are there already?
So we have roughly 49,000 solar panels. So if you can imagine each solar panel is size of your bathroom window, and just imagine 49,000 of them within a single solar farm.
Wow, okay, that's vast. So in comparison with, say, a typical house installation, how many of those panels would someone fit on their home normally, do you think?
For a typical house, you can fit in anywhere between 10 to 12 of those panels on the roof.
Okay, so we're absolutely thousands and thousands more for the solar farm. Right.
Exactly.
Amazing. And how much electricity can Bracken Ash produce in a year?
The solar farm produces 27 gigawatt hours. A gigawatt hour is just a big way to measure electricity. So 1 gigawatt hour is enough to power a million 100-watt light bulbs for 1 hour. So 27 gigawatt hours is enough to power 27 million light bulbs for 1 hour. And that's bright, probably bright enough to be able to see it from space.
Goodness me. Okay, so that's an awful lot of energy that those solar panels are producing. And where does that energy go?
So the energy generally flows into one of the pylons. So imagine you're driving past and you see loads and loads of pylons on your
Mhm.
way. So the energy gets fed into one of those pylons, and then it gets consumed at the nearest household. So if you live near a solar farm, it's most likely that you're being powered by solar itself.
And roughly how many homes can you power with the energy from Bracken Ash, do you think?
It'll power around 9,000 houses, which is like a small town, or enough to power Disney World for half a day.
Goodness me. Okay, so 9,000 homes across the year. That's quite a serious impact that the site is having then. That's pretty amazing. How do local people feel about having the solar farm there?
When people live close by to a solar farm, going to hear about the proposed solar farm, they're generally concerned. That is mainly because people fear what they can't see and they don't know.
Mhm.
But once we've sort of been out and explained the solar farm to them, their big concerns are normally being able to see it from their house or the potential that it might reduce the price of their house. But once we've spoken to them and talked how we can screen the views, they're generally much calmer. And when the solar farm's built and they realize that actually it's not really affecting their lives at all, they're generally fine. I think it's all about liaising with local people who are affected by the solar farm early on in the process and
Mhm.
making sure that, as you say, you do allow for their concerns, and you can move panels and you can plant hedges and you can plant trees, and there's lots that you can do to make it as least offensive as possible, if that's the right phrase.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, ultimately, we need that renewable energy, don't we? So, it makes sense. It's got to go somewhere. But I suppose it's always more difficult when it's kind of just by your house than it would be if it was somewhere else and you're not having to think about it.
I think
Um,
that is one of the things is everyone wants to plug a phone in or turn a television on, but nobody's able to see where the power is made.
Exactly.
You know, if you gave people a choice of a coal power station, a nuclear power station, or a solar farm, or a wind turbine, they'd probably choose the solar farm.
Yeah, I would think so. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the thought of having, say, a nuclear power station built on your doorstep is definitely way worse than the thought of having a solar farm. So, what's the typical life of a solar panel then? How long do they last?
So a solar panel can last as long as you want. It will keep on generating power for as long as it can. But typically, a maximum output from a solar panel can be obtained within the first 30 to 40 years of their lives, after
Okay.
which they would need to be replaced in order to increase the power output.
Yeah. Okay. So 30 to 40 years, that's a pretty long time for them to be sort of active and useful. But what happens at the end of their useful life? What happens to the panels?
So what typically happens is once we have seen the end of life of the solar panel, we have it removed from the site, and then it's taken to a recycling station where each component of the solar panel, which is glass, metal, cables, etc., gets separated up and are recycled individually for a second life. Typically, the second life would not be a solar panel. It would
Right.
have a
Okay.
second life. So a glass could be used somewhere, can be recycled somewhere and used
Okay.
on its own. The cables can be recycled and used on its own separately. Yeah.
How long are you expecting Bracon Ash to be generating electricity for?
Yeah, we would expect it to generate for about 40 years.
Yeah.
So that means that by the time we take it down, most of you watching this will be the same age as your parents are now.
Yeah. Some of them might be involved in taking it down. In fact, you never know.
But no, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What happens to the site afterwards? You know, when it's dismantled, what happens then?
Well, our aim is to make the field that we build the solar farms a better place than they are now. So before we start building, we take lots of photographs of the field. And then during the construction process, we plant new hedges, we plant trees. That's to help screen views. And so once the solar farm is removed, the field's had a chance to rest for 40 years, which means the soil is ready for new crops. The hedges should be full and hopefully full of wildlife, and the trees are tall and strong. And so the field, hopefully, will be better than it is today.
That's great. Are you planting the field with anything during the time that the solar panels are in place?
Yeah, we normally put various different things. Sometimes it's recreating wildflower meadows, bird seed mixes to attract birds there, and grasses. It's sort of we're returning the field to nature, I suppose, while the panels are there.
That's really good because yeah, I have read that actually biodiversity considerably goes up often around solar panels simply because of the fact that you've got that more biodiverse mix of stuff growing there. Are you planning on grazing any sheep or anything there as well under the panels, or is that?
Yeah, we do graze sheep on our solar farms, and a lot of it's to do with because obviously we're not farmers ourselves, and so
No, for sure.
Finding a farmer that is happy to graze sheep or a farmer that will graze sheep and bring them to the site to use them. But it's a good way to maintain the field and also, still retain some agricultural use to it.
Is there any kind of, well, I'm sure there is an environmental impact to making solar panels in the first place. And do you have any idea of how long it takes roughly for the environmental impact to be cancelled out by the energy that the solar panel is creating?
That's right. So there is an environmental impact. So a solar panel is made of metals which are mined from quarries. And obviously there is a carbon footprint for mining these metals, and then carbon footprint for manufacturing the solar modules and then transporting it. But since from the day one, when the solar panel starts generating green energy, it takes around 3 years for the solar panel to offset all the carbon footprint that it has had during the manufacturing and transport stage.
Okay, so then doing the maths, you've got 37 years of basically clean energy being produced. Yeah.
That's right.
Fantastic. That's really good. Okay, this is probably quite a complicated question. Can you explain simply how solar panels make electricity using sunlight?
It can go quite technical, but I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. So solar cell works by converting sunlight into electricity. So imagine the sun as a huge light bulb sending loads of energy particles called photons. These photons, when it hit the solar cell, there is a special material within the solar cell that gets excited, which means that when it gets excited, the electrons within these special materials starts moving, and the movement of this electron is what generates electricity.
Yeah, yeah, okay. That's a really good explanation, because it is all about those photons, sort of exciting the
Electrons
electrons,
within,
isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah. So it's really interesting as a different way of generating energy, as opposed to, say, the conventional sort of power station where you're still exciting electrons, but you're doing it using a magnet that you're spinning really at a
that's right.
high speed within a coil of copper. But of course, to do that, you're generally burning a fossil fuel, whereas when you're using solar energy, all you're doing is using the sunlight.
That's right.
Um, how much sunlight do they need to be able to generate electricity?
So the solar panel can generate electricity as long as you can see each other. So it doesn't need heavy. It's not about how much sunlight. It's about the intensity of the sunlight. So the more the intensity of the sunlight is, the more power you would generate. But the solar panel would work as long as if you can see each other. That means there is some sunlight and it will still generate. So the myth of a solar panel not being able to generate on a cloudy day is slightly wrong, because as long as, even if it is cloudy, but as long as you can see each other, it would still keep on generating.
Okay, so can you tell me about the efficiency of the solar panels? Has that increased over the years?
Yeah, a simple way to explain it is to imagine a solar panel that cost £100 that could power your PlayStation for 1 hour. And then next month they bring out a solar panel that costs £20 and can power your PlayStation for 5 hours. So basically what you've got is you're spending less money, you're getting more power. And that's called cost reduction and better efficiency. And that's kind of what's happening in the solar industry.
Right, so energy being produced by solar panels is getting cheaper and cheaper effectively.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Amazing, that's really good. Do you think there's going to be a ceiling on how efficient we can actually make solar panels ultimately?
That's a good question, because there is a theoretical limit on how much maximum power a solar can produce. So the theoretical limit is 31%, and it
Mhm.
theoretically the efficiency can't go beyond 31%. But there is a lot of research going on where researchers are working on combining different metals in order to ensure that we can even cross this limit. So, for example, there is a solar module called perovskite module, which can actually produce more than 40% of efficiency, but it combines 5 to 6 different metals together, and which makes it very expensive, and hence it's not being deployed or used as of now. But in future, you can see those sort of solar modules being used in the solar farms nearby you.
Yeah. Okay, that's that. Well, it's nice to know there is still some distance to travel before we reach kind of maximum efficiency of solar panels. Why is renewable energy so important?
Renewable energy is super important because it's like using nature's power that never runs out. So think of the sun, the wind, and water. They're always around, and we can use them to make electricity. So right now, a lot of our energy comes from things like coal and oil, which are like snacks hidden deep underground. Once we eat all the snacks, they're gone. And when we eat them, or when we burn them, the air gets dirty, kind of like smoke from a campfire. But with renewable energy, it's like using the sun's power to power your video games or the wind to keep the lights on. And it doesn't make dirty air, and we keep on using it forever. So using renewable energy keeps our earth clean and safe for you, me, the animals, and the trees.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, one last question, and this is to do with battery storage, because of course one key kind of downside, if you like, of solar panels is that they don't work at night, because there's no sunlight. So, what do you think about the idea of combining battery storage with solar power?
We think it's really important. As you just said, solar panels don't produce at night. They're like big windows that take the sunlight and create power. But with batteries, what we can do is during the day when the sun's bright and the panels are producing more than we actually need, we can put that into a battery so that at night we can turn that battery on and we can use that power, which basically means that we can use clean energy all day and all night. So it's kind of like having a lunchbox and putting your leftover snacks in it and then picking them out any time of the day or night when you're hungry.
Do you see, there being lots and lots of battery storage connected with solar farms in the future as a means of making sure that we've got sustainable power through the day and the night?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the criticisms of renewable energy, whether it's wind or solar, is that wind doesn't produce when the wind's not blowing and solar doesn't produce at night. And so the only way we can really make it replace fossil fuels such as coal and oil is if it can be 24/7, so day and night. And the batteries are the only way that we can make it do that.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's been really interesting, and I'm sure it's helped a lot of the young people to understand more about how the solar panels actually work, and the work that you're doing at Luminous Energy as well to make sure that we have that really sustainable, renewable energy for our futures. So, Dave, Ali, thank you very much for talking to us today.
No problem. Thanks very much, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.